My journey with gaming platforms has been that of a nomad the last few generations. It's only been recently that I've settled into like a quasi PlayStation fanboy state of mind, but can you blame me? Now look, let's put all the shenanigans to the side about, oh, Sony is going to be destroyed or Sony's about to die is baloney. When you look at the totality of content that PlayStation has put out so far this generation, it is top-notch quality content. And the PlayStation 5 is a great console. The PlayStation 5 Pro even takes it up a notch. Have they been fully transparent on what's coming down the pike? Is it embarrassing that these games as a service titles still are like unsettled? Absolutely. PlayStation's not perfect by far. But when you look at the totality of offerings, the caliber of work that PlayStation has done, the fact that they've been in these ruts before, even with the PlayStation 4, they went the first several years without any real hardcore exclusive, then they bounced back and whoop butt like always. So despite all that hoopla, they know how to put out quality. That being said, I, as a gamer that wants to be thoroughly excited, I'm always looking for more. I'm always looking to expand my my portfolio. And I will game on any and everything that houses games that I like, but for the most part, I like to hunker into a singular platform. I will admit, the reemergence in performative growth of cloud gaming over the past few years have diversified my gaming much. But again, I still prefer to have a singular platform that provides the bulk of what I'm looking for in simplifying and suiting my gaming needs. And again, the honor goes to PlayStation because when you look at it from 5,000 feet, it's hard to beat the AAA genre defining stuff that they put out there, the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro as high performing consoles. That's it. In walks in the alleged promises of the Nintendo Switch 2. And even though I ignored the last model, things have been said and rumored recently that definitely has caught my eye this time. Can this be my pullback into Nintendo full time, like in my youth? I sure hope so. With that, let's talk why. What's up, people? It's your boy MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, MM2K Gaming. Back again with another episode of Quick Doses, where we talk about the latest and greatest in video gaming news. And man, oh man, oh man, do we have a great one for you today. But before we get into all that, do us a huge favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and rock those bells for notifications, please, so you know when we're dropping these doses. When you rock those bells, make sure that you switch it to all so you don't miss any of our great content. Okay, and I got to pre-warn you, we like to show video footage and all that great stuff, but I can't show any Nintendo footage. You know why? Because they're too daggone litigious. I would love to show it, but they got to change their practices. They ain't getting us shut down. All right, and I'm not no streaming partner or whatever it is that you got to do, but I am very interested in this console, and that's another reason why they should like ease up on their streaming rules and stuff like that, because people like me can really blow the Nintendo Switch 2 even more wide open than the one has been blown up to. But we'll get into all that. All right. So in order for me to talk about, why me as a PlayStation quasi fanboy or fanboy, whatever you want to call me, why even though I have all that excitement for PlayStation, and I am keeping a keen eye of what the leadership does because they haven't been the most transparent on exclusive content, the proposition of the Nintendo Switch got me giddy like a kid from back in the 90s again. In order for me to explain that, I got to go through the history real quick. Nintendo is important to me. It wasn't the first console that I gamed on because, I first gamed on the Atari, the ColecoVision, and the Commodore 64. And those came out, a few years before Nintendo. But what happened was right before Nintendo's home console came out, those prior platforms had brought gaming to the home, and they've done it in a very retail successful way. And then with the Atari, which was, taking the throne, they went from the 2600 to the 5200, and it just didn't feel like much of an upgrade. The games didn't look that much better. And then they just seem worse. Like it's just like they were rushing to make things, and the game's just like, there is no 5200 game that from memory people like, oh yeah, that was a great 5200 game. It's like they were remakes of the prior 2600 games, the Atari 2600 that is, but they were worse. Okay. So then with everybody having an Atari in their home and them like, oh, the Atari sucks, they just abandoned Atari and went back to the arcades and started playing games in the arcades. And so for a while, arcade gaming was the way to play in the home, right? Nintendo said, you know what? We're gonna bring it back. Now Nintendo was already a big staple in the arcades with games like Donkey Kong and so forth. And then they released Mario Brothers out in the arcade, and that was a smash hit. Like Mario, oh my gosh. Like we had never seen anything like that in the arcade. It was just so popular. Nintendo said that we're gonna step it up a notch, and they brought that Mario experience to the home in a home console, and the rest is history. Now, I did miss the Nintendo 64 craze because I'll be honest with you, I was so buckled down in work. I hardly did any gaming. I had a PlayStation 1 at the time, and all I did was every blue moon on a Saturday, if I didn't have anything to do, I would hunker down, play like 3 hours of an JRPG and try to complete it. But outside of that, I didn't do any gaming. And I missed that whole N64, early PlayStation 1 era, because I just didn't like the triangulated 3D models. I just didn't like it, right? So that and work just kept me away. But I came back to gaming when the GameCube and the OG Xbox was out. And I had got all three. I got the GameCube, the OG Xbox, and the PlayStation 2. I had the trifecta because I was like, oh, I got a lot of catching up to do to get into gaming, right? And the GameCube ended up being my favorite place to play. And now, unfortunately, the GameCube had fizzled out. And I love playing games like Metroid Prime that was on there and Baten Kaitos. And I love the innovation that they tried to put out there because they had the Game Boy Advance, which was the handheld. If you had Game Boy Advances, you could use them as controllers on certain games like Final Fantasy Tactics, I believe. Oh, it was a phenomenal experience to get that stuff and play it and do all this other stuff, right? But then they gave up on the console because it just didn't break saturation. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the controller was underwhelming, where the Microsoft and the Sony controllers were better adapted for nuanced gaming. The controllers that were with the Nintendo GameCube just weren't. And instead of trying to revamp the controllers and sell them and all that stuff, they just gave up because they had something else in mind. Even though they had great games like, Metroid, Baten Kaitos and whatever, they went to the Wii. They went to a very, very casual front with the Wii and saw humongous success with the Wii platform, particularly because we know it was Wii Sports. And even though I had Wii Sports, everybody had Wii Sports, my job had Wii Sports. You could sign up at lunch to play Wii Sports online at my job, you know what I mean? To play Wii Sports in the cafeteria. Wii Sports was a phenomenon, but let's be honest, outside of Wii Sports, Metroid, was that Zelda, and maybe a couple other games, there was nothing but shovelware on that platform. So it didn't rope me back in as it being a permanent way for me to play. And then I wasn't into the DSs. I wasn't into the portables. Like I said, I only got the Game Boy Advances because they could work as an extension, as controllers. You know what I mean? Just never been into portables because I love the idea of being able to play the game on the go. But when I'm at home, I want to be able to play the game, as with all the bells and whistles, like on a console. So if I can take that same experience and play it on a home console, opposed to it being an a la carte separate handheld only experience, I'm all for it. That's not what the Nintendo games offered, all like that. I know there were I believe there were cables that you could connect to your TV. It just didn't seem right. It didn't feel right, didn't look right, whatever. It just wasn't for me. That being said, we fast forward to the Nintendo Switch, and they kind of solved that problem with the dockable handheld hybrid type of approach. But the performance wasn't up to par. By that time, you got to remember, I've gone so much time from the GameCube to the Wii U, into now this Nintendo Switch, where I'm doing just top of the line AAA genre defining gaming. What Nintendo was offering, I kind of like abandoned. And, you know, I have a different outlook on gaming. I'm looking for there to be more visible and performant prowess. So when the Nintendo Switch came out, I'm like, that's cool. But if I'm getting those type of graphics, I got to at least get 60 frames per second gaming. And I wasn't getting it. And I'm like, nah, not in for the Switch, right? But now you look at this Switch 2, and it has some promising numbers in regards to, you know, some of these rumors. Like, we're talking about DLSS, more 60 frames per second games, more third-party support, and better visuals. And here, let me show you guys this. This is something that is out here right now in regards to the rumors and what people are expecting for the Switch. And if you look at this, like, it's not. Look, trying to get me to break down what all this means, I'm doing nothing but lying to you. I don't know what any of this stuff means, right? But here's what I can tell you. I do like that there is a possibility that this could lead to better performance, better graphics. People are like, oh, you know what? You might get 60 frames per second gaming out of this. Now, I had this debate with Cold Blood, our co-host here on this channel. Cold Blood is like, hey, Maz, you ain't getting no. He's like, bro, you ain't getting no 60 frames per second gaming out of this, and you're not getting. And then one of the expectations that I had was, what was I looking for? I was looking for like at least 1440p docked. Like, if I could get 1440p docked, I was like, you know what? I'm cool with that. He's like, bro, you ain't getting 1440p docked with this. Like, stop it, bro. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know. But here's what I will tell you. If Nintendo can offer me this, okay, if I can get this with the Nintendo, I will definitely be a happy camper. What am I looking for? I'm looking for 60 frames per second. Okay. I'm looking for 60 frames per second gaming. I'm looking for DLSS implementation, because even though if you look at these specs, as my brother Cold Blood had alluded to, and they don't look that impressive natively, I feel like if DLSS is involved, we could get better performance. I am looking for hopefully 1440p support docked. And like I said, I do realize after going through all these years and looking for the biggest and baddest and this with gaming and that with gaming, I'm gonna tell you this much. I don't need all the bells and whistles. I don't need the ceiling to be high with Nintendo games, because where they lack in maybe visual prowess, they make up for in gameplay. So even if it's as long as it's at an acceptable level, I'm okay with what Nintendo may offer. And that acceptable level is 1440p docked, and I'm hoping around 900p undocked, right? With, more importantly, 60 frames per second gaming. Like, I'm really hoping that I can get 60 frames per second more often than not. That's my big whoop to do more than anything, is getting those frames, because I'm real big on my frames per second. Okay. But with that said, those are my expectations, and the visuals that I'm looking for, PlayStation 4-ish visuals. I'm okay with that. And last but certainly not least, I would like for it not to be more than $500. If it's more than $500, like, I'll put it like this. If it got DLSS type of technology that can do some great upscaling, and I'm getting 1440p visuals definitely when docked, in 1080. Definitely when undocked and it's hitting 60 frames per second consistently. Okay. All right, cool. Maybe I will settle for a little bit over 500, 540 or something. Normally, you know, when it comes to these things, it's like 500, 550, whatever the case may be. Okay. So, or not 550. It's normally like 500, 600, whatever. So I don't know if I would pay $600 for this thing. I would be more inclined if it hits all my bells and whistles and expectations. And if I'm going to pay $600 for it, that performance has to be more at a PlayStation 4 Pro level than a PlayStation 4. But again, my standards are 500, PlayStation 4 comparable visuals. I really want that 1440p support when docked in 60 frames per second, docked or undocked. Those are not that negotiable. Okay. Now, again, I know there's going to be games to where that's not the target because it just ain't capable of doing it. But I want that to be the platform target. You know, is that, hey, we're targeting 1440p, 60 frames per second. Okay. All right. With that said, those are my expectations for its offerings. Here, let's do this. Let's go play some more PlayStation footage for my Nintendo. Hey, I'm sorry, they're too litigious for me, man. Anyway, but I guess it relates because I am a PlayStation fanboy, telling you why I want to switch. And I think there's other PlayStation fanboys like myself that are like that, or quasi fanboys, whatever. Here's the reason. Nintendo games are cool, man. Nintendo games are cool. And a lot of the Nintendo games that are out there, they really celebrate Japanese developed games like JRPGs, like Sony games do. So there's a lot of cool JRPGs that they get over there that we don't get over here as PlayStation games, right? And we would love to have if that performance just had a slightly higher floor, right? And look, we got to be honest here. Two things. Number one, for those of you that are interested in more competent portable gaming, Nintendo is the best at it because everything is going to be portable. I like what PlayStation is doing through the PlayStation Portal, but every game isn't portable day one, right? So they're working on them fast, but every game, day one isn't. I can play it on the go. I can take it to work with me, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And that's the difference. Where Nintendo, with their solution, they tackle that day one, of course. But here's the bigger thing. We got to be honest here, PlayStation gamers. As much as I celebrated what PlayStation has done when you look at things overall and not just focus on Concord or canceled live service games that you guys didn't want to play anyway, right? There is a lack of transparency when it comes to exclusive content that's coming to PlayStation. Like everybody talks about the PlayStation banger. All we know about is only thing we've been given a release time frame for is Ghost of Yatai. That's it. Of course, we know other games are coming, but how many and when? How many and when? You know, where we know Nintendo's going to be whipping them out. I don't know if I said this before or I said this on the previous take of this video. When you look at the Sakana/NPD numbers for games that are in the top 20, that's not the real list of the best-selling games. You know that, right? Because Nintendo games aren't only being reported in their physical copies. If they were to add the digital copies for the Nintendo Switch or Nintendo games, the whole top 20 list, probably the whole top 50 list would be nothing but Nintendo games. That's the power of having true exclusives where you bring people, like, hey, look, this is top quality stuff. You need our hardware in order to play this. And because they set it up to where you need the hardware to play the software, they have to ensure that the games are better. And they are. And that's a stronghold for PlayStation. But the more and more they follow Hiroki Totoki and Herman Hulst and they slide from that, you can see that quality lessen if they take more of a multi-plat approach, because multi-plats in general are just looking for volume, where exclusives, particularly for PlayStation, they're a lure. And when they lure you correctly, like Nintendo does, because that's the only way you're going to get them, they are the best of the best, right? And that's not to take anything from PlayStation. Their games are still the best of the best, but if this trend continues, you're going to start seeing the Nintendo games heavily outshine the the PlayStation games, because there's going to be a heightened sense of urgency because they are tethered to the hardware. That's just the way that it works, the way the industry works. Since I've been gaming in it the last 40 years, you're not changing that overnight, right? And I'm currently missing that transparency of exclusives and the widespread portable stuff from PlayStation. I said in prior recordings, I really like the game on NVIDIA GeForce Now. I love them. They give you top tier 1% PC gaming in the cloud. That is phenomenal. But some things that would make them stand out more would be, ensuring that they get all of the blockbuster games exclusive, which is going to be hard for them because they're a niche service. And more importantly, something I think that wouldn't be so hard for them, it just takes some time and they need to make that investment, is mod support. They need to have wider mod support. So I'm going to get that type of uniqueness, not necessarily mod support, but the approach to uniqueness through Nintendo, and get more transparency when it comes to their exclusive content, because that's their bread and butter. Here's what I got to say in closing. Nintendo Switch 2 is poised to have enough going for it this time around that makes the gaming portfolio complete for anybody, including PlayStation gamers like myself, who still are looking for a little bit more. From being a staple in my childhood, they are slowly fighting their way back into the AAA genre-defining gaming market if they continue on this path, if all those positive rumors that we talked about are correct. I'm talking about DLSS implementation, consistency in 60 frames, more third-party support and better visuals. If those things are true, they're slowly but surely creeping back into that space. They still have a bit ways to go. However, their unique branding of games would be an interesting one to follow, or just to observe if someday they perfectly wielded their uniqueness in the level design and gameplay loop and all of the stuff that makes Nintendo great without the stellar graphics and performance. But then they add not just good, not just acceptable, but stellar graphics and performance. And that, my fellow PlayStation gamers, might be the swift kick in the rear end PlayStation needs. Because as we can see via decisions as of late, and as I mentioned earlier, them not having viable competition, it's not the situation that makes the outcome best for us. And with that said, that's it from your boy. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below, because like I always say, I'm curious what I think, but if you did like what I had to say, check out the links below to follow me. Again, they will lead you to Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, and MM2K Gaming. With that said, peace, and have a wonderful, wonderful gaming day.